I mentioned earlier that my mom had me at a very young age, and my conception is not my story to tell. But what I will tell you is that it led to a lot of resentment, a lot of anger for 33 years. I didn't know who my biological father was. For the most part, I didn't care on the outside, but deep in, I wanted to know who he was, who this man was. And at 33 years old, a few years ago, I had told my wife, hey, if we find him, I would want to know. But until then, I'm not worried about it. We had no information on this guy. And my wife started doing some digging. She did a 23andMe, and I provided a DNA sample, which provided me with a sixth cousin. That's all the information that it gave me. All of this happened without me knowing any of it. My wife knew that it bugged me, and I really didn't want any part until there was a final answer. So she did all of this without me knowing. Again, I didn't know this. I didn't know anything about this man for 33 years. And my wife reaches out to this sixth cousin and says, hey, do you know any family that lives in Youngstown, Ohio? And the cousin got back and said, hey, I don't know anybody in that area. I'm sorry. About a year goes by. She gets a message from that sixth cousin that said, hey, I actually just realized we had some family in that part of Ohio. This is the name. So my wife reaches out to everyone on social media that she could with that name, asking, my husband is trying to find out who his biological father is. Do you have any intel? And a few months later, a 72-year-old man reaches out on social media and says, hey, I don't know any details or any information, but I'm willing to help you. My wife says, would you be willing to take a DNA test? And this guy says yes. So she mails him a kit. He does a DNA test, comes back, this is my grandfather. And I still don't know at this time, but my wife does a little more digging and comes to find out this guy had a son and a daughter. She reaches out to the daughter and asks her to take a test. And the daughter said, I already took a test. Let me check my profile. She checks the profile and it says, nothing attached. So we're on the hunt again. A few days later, she reaches back out to my wife and says, hey, I actually clicked a setting that says share to the open network. And it came back that your husband is my brother. So that led to one man being my biological father, being my grandfather's son and my sister's dad. So my wife reaches out, gets a little bit of information from this guy, and we realize he's not too far from us in Florida. Everybody else is still in Ohio, and this guy is pretty close to us in the state of Florida. I get home from an alligator hunt with my buddy Justin, and my wife is standing at the front door waiting for me to get home. It's a normal night. And she's got the most interesting expression on her face to where it worries me. And I remember being so upset that night, thinking that she was about to deliver me with some information that was going to rock my world in a very, very bad way. I remember getting extremely angry and saying, like, tell me what's going on right now. She hands me an envelope. And I remember I know nothing that's going on. She hands me an envelope and it's got a man's name in it. And I asked who he was, and she said, that's your biological father. At that moment, 33 years of emotions hit me, and I didn't know how to feel. But I was in a vehicle the next morning heading to Tampa, Florida. I remember not knowing why I was going. I called my pastor, Joby Martin, who's a mentor and amazing man in my life.
Amazing man.
He says to me, knowing all the details, hey, there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Regardless of the story, we're required to forgive even if it's for the things that you have felt, righteous or not righteous, the way that you felt for the last 33 years, we're required to forgive because that's what Jesus did for us. He took our debts and he threw them in the trash on the cross. Reconciliation is a choice, and that's up to you. That requires repentance, and that's up to you.
You pause for a second. I want to, because I know, I don't know where you're going to go with this, but with fatherlessness being such an issue in America, why do you think that we're so impacted by not knowing who you had a stepdad that raised you, you had people step into your life. This man who's your biological father had no role in your life for 33 years. Why do you think it's such a profound impact to just find out who your father is? Like what do you think inside of us we're wired that way to be so moved and so shaken by who a biological father is?
I can honestly say I have no clue.
But something was.
I think that the point of this story is the Lord's plan rolling out, which is the only reason, which may have been forgiveness in my life. The only reason I actually wanted to find out who this man was, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why I wanted to meet this man. I want to be clear on something that my dad, first of all, I will always and only have one dad, and his name is Brian Dragich. And man, he was the best dad that I could have asked for. You know, I was a hard-charging, hard-nosed kid that made my own bad choices, but he did the best that he could to raise me as a strong Christian man should do, and I'm grateful for him, and I love him as my dad. I didn't want to meet this man because I was looking for my father or a dad. I want to make that very clear. I really don't understand why I wanted to find out who he was. Maybe it was just closure and not knowing what was out there, family history, health, if he's still alive, who he is, what he looks like. But on that car ride down there, man, and I'll get to your point and ask and answer your question. I'm driving down his street to meet him for the first time. And I stop and I really start to ask myself and question myself why and what I'm doing. And for the first time ever, I felt the Lord tell me, you're coming down here to forgive this man and to break any chains that exist, that have existed for the last 33 years. I pursue the front door. I knock. He answers. And I look at a man who's blind, completely blind. I walk in and I ask to talk to him in private. He shares his story with me. His struggles, the details of his story and what happened, again, aren't mine to tell. But what I do know is this man was shot 7 times, 3 in the face and 4 in the chest. Both of his eyes were shot out. He couldn't see. And he was also saved after being dumped over a bridge with a cinder block tied to his legs. He landed on a block of ice and he was found and also led to Jesus and freed from a lifestyle of addiction. What came from that story, man, was me to see clearly more than I've ever seen was the redemptive power of a relationship with Jesus. I also experienced forgiveness, overwhelming forgiveness, grace, and love in a way that I didn't know for 33 years. I came from a life of pure vengeance. That's all I knew. That's everything that I wanted up to that point in my life was vengeance against the enemy, both physically and spiritually. And I find myself here feeling grace, love, and forgiveness for a man who at the time I thought didn't deserve. He has now been free from addiction for going on 10 years, and he speaks and shares his story about how the Lord freed him from those things as well. So to answer why I wanted to find out who he was, I really can't answer that. And I still to this day, I pray, Lord, why did I find him? And what are you going to do with this story?
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know.
When was this?
This was about 2 to 3 years ago.
You in contact with him still?
Briefly.
Yeah.
I do talk to him here and there. And I do just pray that forgiveness is given full spectrum to everybody involved in our entire family story. And I pray that the world will see through this story God's power to redeem. I really do. I really, really do, man. Because
Yeah.
I still feel a certain way about it. But I just know the Lord's not done with it yet.
Yeah, I don't think so either.